Our job is to either incrementally or exponentially grow the business. That's the only reason we exist. We do not exist to just build brand for the sake of brand. We build brand because that's going to incrementally or exponentially increase business. Otherwise, we have no need to be in that. We are an extension of the sales team to help them close more deals.
Welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast, hosted by Bernie Borges. This is the podcast for the modern marketer who wants to hear from their peers in the trenches and the occasional analyst or rockstar influencer sharing strategies and tactics about what's working in modern marketing. Be sure to listen to the end of each episode for Bernie's summary and takeaways so you can plan your next move in your own modern marketing journey.
This episode is brought to you by Gong.io, the #1 conversation intelligence platform for sales. Gong helps you achieve revenue success, skyrocket rep performance, and gain critical market intelligence. Get powerful visibility into your customer conversations with Gong. Head over to Gong.io to get started. And Gong is spelled G-O-N-G. Hey there, welcome to episode 260 of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. I'm Bernie Borges, CMO of Ingresso, and your host. Hey, thanks for listening. Hey, my guest on this episode is Sangram Vajre, Chief Evangelist and co-founder of Terminus. Sangram, welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast.
Thanks, Bernie. Really excited. I'm so glad we're finally doing this thing.
Yeah, no kidding. It took us a little while to get here, but hey, we are here, and I'm excited to talk with you in general. I'm going to try to keep this to a normal 30-minute episode. We can talk for hours on this topic as well as other related topics, but we're going to talk about ABM is B2B. That is actually the title of your exciting new book. The premise, of course, is why B2B marketing and sales is broken and how to fix it. But Sangram, before we dive into that, I always like to begin with a brief introduction of my guest. So tell us a little bit about you and your company, Terminus, and of course, your role there as co-founder and chief evangelist.
Absolutely, Bernie. So first of all, that title, Chief Evangelist, and you couple that with co-founder actually sounds like a not so good of a title. Like when you think about what do you really do? So we'll get to that in a second. But I think just historically, most recently, I ran marketing at Pardot and went through the acquisition of ExactTarget and Salesforce. I think that acquisition was about for $2.5 billion. And that was like the biggest acquisition in the history of just Salesforce and Martech. And so I really, really, really enjoyed the 2 years that I spent at Salesforce, just learning behind the scenes, looking at Mark Benioff and how do you think big? How do you scale stuff? So I learned a lot about that, and then co-founded Terminus in late 2014, early 2015, with the idea of that, hey, look, there got to be a better way to do marketing and sales. Ended up writing the very first book on account-based marketing that Wiley's published in 2016. And here we are 4 years into it, just finished another book and the premise. So I'm sure we'll dive deeper into it. But as you said, just at a high level, Terminus, the whole platform is around helping you do marketing better. Basically, specifically, more you can do targeted advertising through Terminus on LinkedIn and all those places. So if your target audience is out there, we can help you get your message in front of them. And on the back end, we also do analytics, which are at the account level, which is very different than the analytics we have learned and understood for the last decade and a half, which is all about leads. So we can dive all that into more as we get into the book.
Okay. Well, the other thing I don't want to leave out is that you're also a podcaster yourself. And, here I am. We publish the Modern Marketing Engine podcast 3 times per month. This is episode 260. You publish daily. I think you're at episode 460 or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I have lost count. But yeah, it's daily. And Bernie, quite frankly, I think it's really the community. I think since we were talking about that before we started to record, I have a saying that which is without a community, you're simply a commodity. And hopefully I live by that as a message. And when I started the podcast, I didn't know how long we were going to go. We'll just do it. That was really the thing. And then as we got into the first year, I just opened it up to the community. So now every Tuesday, somebody in the community runs the podcast and they interview their own 4 or 5 people, like Katie Bullard right now, the president of Discord.org. She is running a series on how do you go from CMO to CEO, right? So stuff like that I couldn't have done by myself. So I think by opening up to the community, it has just allowed to have a very rich set of content and really get everybody involved.
Now, Sangram, you've named the podcast the Flip My Funnel podcast. So I have to ask you, for my listener who may not know of your podcast, because I want to give it a plug. It's a great podcast. What's with the name Flip My Funnel?
That's a long story, but I'll make it really short. When we started Terminus, Bernie, and this was like, as I said, late 2014, 2015, I was on a flight back from San Francisco to Atlanta. We're based in Atlanta right now. And I came from a conference that most people know, Scott Brinker's MarTech conference. That was the 4th year. And I was on a 5-hour flight, sitting in the middle seat with no Wi-Fi and 2 drunk people next to me.
What a visual.
You're right. Like that was, and it's a 5-hour flight right in the middle. Like, so I was like, okay, what do I do? So I had a napkin and I had a pen and I'm like, okay, I got to be productive here, do something. So I started to draw the traditional funnel, which everybody knows, which is broad at the top, narrow at the bottom, like inverted triangle. And out of curiosity or boredom, whatever you might want to call it, I just flipped it on its head. And what came out was this idea of flip funnel. I'm like, well, what if you reimagine the way marketing and sales works? Why does it have to be about everybody out there and then figure out the qualification process, then find if they have budget or not, then figure out if they're going to be a customer or not? That's why Forrester put out a study that says less than 1% of the leads turn into customer. So when I flipped it, it really became like, all right, what about flipping the funnel, flip my funnel? So by the time I landed, I had written down without Wi-Fi, just on my own WordPress, I just wrote a blog. And when I landed, I couldn't contain myself. I went and bought a domain, Flip My Funnel, for $8. And then I wrote a LinkedIn post, and that went super viral. So that's really how Flip My Funnel was born.
That's great. And just think, it was inspired by a couple of drunk people that flanked you. And the rest is history. That's terrific. Well, Sangram, let's get right to it. You actually already said something that I wanted to come to, so I'm going to come back to it, that I believe is at least in part inspiration to your second book, ABM is B2B. And that is that less than 1% of all leads become a customer. That is clearly a problem. So why don't you kind of speak to that point and the inspiration that gave you for this book, ABM is B2B?
That's a great question, Bernie. And I hope everybody who's listening kind of pauses at this point. If you haven't listened anything before, and if you skip everything after this, this is the part I really want people to dial in and listen in, maybe turn up the volume a little bit, because that should scare the shit out of everybody who has a job in marketing or sales. Because it's a study, it's a reality. And if you really go back and look at all the leads that marketing and sales are generating, and you look at them and say, only 1% are turning into a customer, that means people should be fired, right? I mean, if you go to your CFO and CEO and tell them the truth, which is this in most organizations, this is a Forrester study, so it's done through really, really good number of years. And you tell to your CEO or CFO, hey, look, 99% of what we do in terms of generating leads don't really drive revenue. How do you think that conversation is going to go, right? So I really feel like that is the problem, and that is the key to the whole book. And what I believe is that you really can do we all owe it to ourselves and to our customers, a better job of who we go after. And the reason it's 1% is because we don't know who's coming in the funnel. We don't know if they're ready to buy. We don't know if they're targeted. So we have this idea that there's unlimited amount of leads out there in the marketplace. But the reality is, and this is what really got me and pushed me to write this book, is that if you're in B2B, and if you're a marketer sales listening to this podcast episode right now, and if you honestly ask this question to yourself, or if you go to the office and ask this question and say, what is our total addressable market that we can actually sell to? Chances are you don't have that answer. And chances are your superiors don't have that answer, which means you all think that everybody's your customer or future customer. And the reality is far from it. The reality is probably that only if you close 50 accounts this quarter or this month, you will hit your quota. So focus on those 50 or focus on that vertical or focus in that region. But we don't do that. We all just go after any and everybody that opens up the door or has a pulse. And that honestly is the premise for the book.
Okay. So I want to unpack that a little bit, Sangram, because you said something key here about a lot of marketers don't know the total addressable market. And while that may or may not be true, depending on who you talk to, which marketer, which company, because there's certainly data that could be available to a marketer. I think the real crux of the issue that you're addressing is the fact that in recent years, account-based marketing has really taken off, right? It's become popular. It's become a buzzword. It's become even trendy. But what I hear you saying, Sangram, is that it's no longer really about ABM. It's really about challenging the status quo of how we do marketing and sales in B2B. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so if I were to go and like just benchmark the timeline. So 2016, when I wrote the very first book on account-based marketing, Bernie, I thought that we're just creating a better mousetrap, right? A better way of creating acquisition. That was my personal thinking in 2016. As I progressed in 2017, as this idea ABM started to gain more interest, what I saw companies do is focus on pipeline velocity using account-based strategies, which means, hey, look, if the deal is in pipeline, that means they're going to buy from you or your competitors. Marketing, we need you to give us air cover through advertising, through direct mail, through events, all those things that used to say marketing don't come. They actually started to invite marketing. Sales started to invite marketing more into like, hey, look, I need you to give me more air cover because these deals, they're going to close in the next 30 days. We know that. And we want to be the one that closes. So I saw focus more on the pipeline velocity. 2018, I started seeing more focus on expansion of deals. So if you have a company where 85% of the revenue comes from that 10, or one product, and you have 10 other products that you have, so you want to go upsell, cross-sell. Thomson Reuters is a great example of who does that, or Salesforce. Then in that case, you need to have land and expand, upsell, cross-sell campaigns. And I saw customers of Terminus and just ABM practitioners out there doing more expansion campaigns. And I didn't see that in my marketing automation days at all by marketers focused on. So when I started to focus on this book in 2018, I really thought, whoa, this is just a better way of doing marketing and sales. This is a better way of doing go-to-market strategy. This is what every CEO cares about. This is, quite frankly, better B2B. So that essentially ended up being just the title of the book because we interviewed about 500 people for this book through the podcast and all those things. And it all came back to the same thing is like, look, this is a way bigger idea. And by just calling it account-based marketing, you're putting marketers and salespeople in the acquisition bucket. Take them out. Clearly, the data and stories tell that it's way bigger than that. It's just a smarter, better, more efficient way of doing B2B. So why not call B2B? So my prediction, Bernie, really is that 2 years from now, which is why we wrote the book now, 2 years from now, ABM will not be a buzzword or ABM would not even exist. People would just say, yeah, that's how we should be doing marketing and sales. You're not going after the right people. You don't have the right message on your website. You're just going after everybody. They would call us lunatics. So I think that's what's going to happen 2 years from now. So we wanted to put that anchor out there now.
Okay. You also say that the value of marketing is defined by sales. And if you're saying that ABM equals B2B when it comes to marketing, and it's all about driving deals, right? Driving pipeline and driving close rates and so forth. Expand on what you mean by the value of marketing is defined by sales.
That's like the core, Bernie. You just got me like fired up with that question. That is one of the truths in the book. And I get a lot of hate messages, quite frankly, from marketers on LinkedIn, where I normally would post a lot of these things as like, hey, this is provocative, but not true. What about the branding that I'm doing? What about the booth that I put together? What about the direct mail campaign we just did or the press releases we put it? I'm like, that's all great. Tell me a single company out there today. And Bernie, I'd love for you to answer that question if, as a marketer, tell me a single company you know that has a ton of marketers, B2B company, right? Ton of marketers, but no sales team.
Yeah, the only, and I'm not going to name names, but the only exception, and it wouldn't be the exception, it wouldn't be literally no sales, but there are some B2B companies that have figured out that their customer success team is an important part of their overall sales success. So they've invested in training and integrating customer success with sales, but they still have salespeople for sure.
They have, right? And I think we all know hundreds of companies that are multi-million-dollar companies that have absolutely no marketing, right? Like pretty much sales team is running it and they are now bringing in. So I intrinsically believe, and this is a story that I'm going to back into. I intrinsically believe, Bernie, that our job as marketers, if you're a marketer listening to it, like this is really for us, is our job is to either incrementally or exponentially grow the business. That's the only reason we exist. We do not exist to just build brand for the sake of brand. We build brand because that's going to incrementally or exponentially increase business. Otherwise, we have no need to be in that. We are an extension of the sales team to help them close more deals. And here's another thing. When was the last time, and as I started Terminus, I realized, because I'm looking at income statement, financial statements, I realized that, oh my goodness, marketing and sales is tracked as a sales and marketing percentage in every single company out there. If you're a SaaS company, that's how it's tracked. So that has to be in a certain percentage, which means if the revenue and sales numbers are going down, guess what? Marketing is fired first. Marketing budgets is cut first. And if the sales and revenue is going up, guess what? Marketing is getting more budget. So in both cases, you're tied to the hip. And the story that I want to back into is this. Bernie, I was at, as you know, I was at Salesforce. And I remember one month, we hitting every record possible for my business unit at Pardot for number of leads. And it was about 5,000 leads or something like that. We just did phenomenal. And I was excited, happy. I told everybody, high five, sales team, marketing team, let's go drinks, all that. And the next day, my sales leader comes to me and says, hey, that was fantastic. That was awesome month. Can you guys generate 1,000 more leads next month? And, but I just sank in my seat because I'm like, what am I? Like a coin operated lead machine? Like, what are we here to do? Like, goes back to the total addressable market question, all that stuff. So all this comes down to me, at least in the book and the thesis behind it, seeing so many personal examples and hearing from people, is that we as marketing have a bigger opportunity right now to drive revenue because we have access to information. We know target accounts. We have data now from all these different technologies out there. So there's no reason why we don't know what we can, or who we need to go after. And we don't know what engagement looks like based on the deal velocity and all that stuff. When we have all this information, there's no reason for us to sit back. This is a time to earn it. And by making ensure that we understand that we exist to incrementally and exponentially grow business, I think it puts marketing team in the right frame of mind. And I think that helps them have a better job in their company.
Okay. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of my conversation with Sangram Vajre. Opinions in sales are your worst enemy. Here's why. Your business has million-dollar decisions that if you could answer with facts, you'd have an unfair advantage. Now, some of those questions are, what really separates your best reps from the rest? Why does half of your pipeline slip? And what's the best message to go to market with? Now, if your answers were facts instead of opinions, you'd win the unfair share of your market. It turns out the truth is buried right underneath your nose. It's found in the customer conversations that your team has each and every day. Introducing Gong.io. Gain powerful visibility into your customer conversations. With Gong, you'll win more deals, skyrocket rep success, and gain critical market intelligence that will help you achieve revenue success and win the lion's share of the wealth. Go to gong.io/demo to get started today. One of the things you talk about in the book is the concept of one team. You frame it up as #1team. And before I just ask you to explain what that is, can you put that in the context of the team acronym as well, and what you mean by one team and what you mean by the team acronym?
Oh, great point. I hope that's probably the value of the book, quite honestly. The team framework, which stands for target, engage, activate, measure. I'll say that again, just team, target, engage, activate, and measure. It is a framework that we came up with last year and a half almost, which is now we see in board decks. And the reason it's such a powerful, I would almost say transformative framework is because it allows marketing and sales to have an intelligent conversation with their CEO and CFO. So for example, how many times have you all heard from CEOs? I mean, I talked to a ton of CEOs and CFOs. They're like, hey, yeah, marketing is great. And I'm like, really, what do you really think about your marketing team or stuff? And they would say, I have no idea why they need so many technologies. I have no idea where the money is going. Like when they open up, they would tell you that kind of stuff. Like, I have no idea I think it works. They're doing a whole bunch of activities and it sounds good. But as long as the revenue is going up, it's all good. And they'll start questioning if the revenue goes down immediately, right? So they're just waiting to ask questions, but they don't until something falls. So this framework, target, engage, activate, measure, allows you as a marketing team to really go back to your CEO and CFO and say, all right, we need tools to target better. We need tools to engage better. And here are the tools we're going to use for that. We need tools to better activate our sales team better. It's not just activating customers, it's activating my sales team. They get that. They really want to invest in that. And then we want to measure this, and here are the tools and processes we can do. So this framework allows you to create a really good, compelling case of technology that you want to use. You can literally look at all these technologies, put it in this framework and show it to your CFO. They will 100% get it. And then it allows you to go back to the hashtag one team. It's a framework where you can actually work with your sales team. And instead of saying account-based marketing, account-based sales or whatever, just say, no, this is a team thing. We have to together come up with a target list. We have to together figure out how we're going to engage these accounts and how we're going to activate all those things. So at a highest level, Bernie, what this has happened is this has become our core value. So hashtag one team is Terminus's core value because it really, every time there's a problem, every time there's an issue, every time there's a conflict, every time there's this silo approach, somebody calls out and says, guys, hashtag one team. We're here to solve the problem. So it has really fundamentally allowed us to be a better company.
So as you're evangelizing, which you do well, it's part of your title and it's just in your DNA, Sangram. You do it so well. But as you're evangelizing ABM equals B2B, who would you rather convince first inside an organization? The C-suite or the head of sales, who certainly may be part of the C-suite if it's a chief sales officer. But if it was just like CEO, CFO, or CSO, who would you rather convince first?
CEO, hands down. I'll give you a perfect example on this one because it has happened to me several times. And when I was running marketing at Pardot, marketing automation days, right? No CEO ever got a report from marketing automation saying, here's how marketing works. Like nobody wants to see open rate and click through rate on emails. But everything that you're doing ABM, if you're doing account-based at all, that means that your CFO, your CEO cares about what territories you're in, what kind of engagement, what's happening with your pipeline. These are all business questions. These are not marketing vanity metrics. These are all business questions that could change the trajectory of your company. The reason I say CEO, Bernie, is because I think it also means that the metrics are going to change the way you measure success for your marketing. So if you're a CEO today, and if you're asking what I've heard asked so many times, I have been asked so many times, is like, give me leads and we will take care. I will have the sales do the rest. I've heard that several times. Your job as a marketer is to generate X number of leads. And that frankly has to change to say that give me the leads in the right accounts, right? That's a different conversation. Increase the velocity of the deals in the pipeline. That's a different conversation. So the things that you would do would be different. So if the CEO is not bought into this idea of better, more efficient growth, not just at a financial level, but just an operational level, then marketer or salespeople, no matter how convinced they are, this is a better way to do it. If they're measured with different set of metrics, they will never be able to be successful in this role. And I've seen that as a number one reason why companies fail adopting or deploying account-based is that they didn't get their CEO bought into it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think the other thing that it does is instead of, you made the point that it's business metrics and not just vanity metrics, and that allows the discussion to be less around just quantity of leads that could be sort of invisible to the marketer about the impact that those leads are having on pipeline and closed deals, and more around the right leads, as you said, in the right accounts and what's the customer journey, the conversion path, so that you can be working together on that conversion path to get to the ultimate goal of more closed deals.
Absolutely. One of the things that gets fired me as you say that, Bernie, is the story that we have in the book, which is about a company which you and I'm pretty sure almost everybody have heard about, Thomson Reuters. It's a mega company. And guess what their win rate is when they applied account-based principles for their expansion deals? Just guess a number.
60%.
Go higher.
Really?
It's 95%.
Wow.
And you think about, so it's obviously it cannot be a made up story. So I got their legal department, as a company, that they have a 95% win rate in that department when they're reaching out, doing this account based, and we distill all that in the book. And you think about that as a marketer, sales team, forget everything what we talked about so far. Like, if you forgot everything, just think about this. Imagine walking into your CEO, CFO, or CMO, or executive team, or boardroom, and saying that, team, here's what we need to do. And when we do this, we need to expect results like this, like win rate of 95%, or increasing velocity with 10% higher rate, or closing bigger deals. These are the conversations that gives credibility to a marketer, not how many events we ran and how many activities and how many banner ads we created. It's those results. And I think that is totally possible. You can own the room with the results. And that's what I think the whole thesis around ABM is B2B is all about.
Fantastic. That's a great story. It is also a good segue, Sangram, for me to transition over to my summary. This is where I'm going to summarize the key things that we discussed, and then I'm going to ask you to elaborate if you want to make an additional point or two. Then we'll ask you for your contact information as well as where people can get a copy of ABM is B2B. And then we'll wrap it up and let you get on your way. So we began our conversation really with a little bit of background on the company Terminus that you co-founded in 2014-15. You basically said there's got to be a better way to do marketing and sales. And it's really focused on helping brands target their customers more effectively. You were inspired by a flight back from a conference where you were drawing the funnel and you flipped it and you got the light bulb and you wrote a blog post about it. You bought the domain and kind of took off from there. And the whole Flip My Funnel movement and your podcast and everything has just really taken off from there. So congratulations on all that. And of course, we really focused on discussing the premise for this new book, ABM is B2B. And that is that less than 1% of all leads become customers. And you point out that that's a data point from a Forrester study. And that means that in marketing, that means 99% of what we're doing isn't driving revenue. And you said that in a lot of cases, the marketers don't even know the total available market or who's coming into the funnel. And that's why account-based marketing is so fundamental and how it's really time to challenge the status quo of B2B and really focus on account-based marketing. You mentioned that when you wrote your first book on ABM in 2016, that it was really more around ABM as a better mousetrap. And then you saw it evolve to focus more on pipeline velocity and how marketing was being brought in to provide more air cover on deals with things like events and advertising, direct mail, et cetera. Then you saw in 2018 that it began to be more about expanding in accounts and how you are now predicting that in 2 years, ABM is not even going to be a thing or a buzzword. It's just going to be the way we do B2B. And I'm starting to agree with you on that, by the way. And then we talked about the value of marketing is defined by sales, something that we've talked about many times on this podcast, and how things like branding, hey, there's value in that. And certainly every C-suite wants branding. But hey, every B2B company has a sales organization, and it's our job in marketing to incrementally grow or increase the business. We're an extension of the sales team, and marketing's tracked as a percentage of sales. So we've got to be making a contribution to that is measurable. In the book, you talk about the TEAM acronym. The TEAM acronym stands for Target, Engage, Activate, and Measure. And it's really about allowing marketing and sales to be able to have intelligent conversations with the CEO and the CFO and to be able to answer the question, why do you need tools to target or engage or to activate and to measure results? So it's really a framework that allows you to work with sales and the entire C-suite. We talked about the one team hashtag. That is your core value at Terminus. And it really allows you to drive everything that you do at Terminus with your customers and your community. We talked about how do you convince the CEO about ABM, and it's really about business metrics and not about marketing metrics. So CEOs care about the accounts that we're winning and the business results associated with that. So it's really enabling sales and marketing to be able to have those business conversations with the CEO, get the CEO bought into the value of ABM, and then you've got a great chance, a great story in front of you to implement ABM successfully. Speaking of great story you shared from the book, the Thomson Reuters story, that they have a whopping 95% win rate using ABM. That is absolutely breathtaking. And hey, that's setting the bar very, very high. But look, it gives credibility to marketers and it gives credibility to the ABM model. So Sangram, I'm going to leave my summary there. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Oh, Bernie, first of all, I was taking notes on your summary because that was exceptionally well done. Summary for this. I think I would leave everybody with this question that I want people to wrestle with more than anything else, which is that what matters to you? I think, you really think about that as a question, like what matters to you? If it doesn't matter to you that your customers have phenomenal experiences, does it matter that your marketing and sales teams work really closely together to drive revenue? Or is that just you don't expect that to happen? Does it matter that people wait for your emails to come in and they share those emails saying that this is the better way of doing emails as opposed to just batch and blast? Like, it really comes down to that fundamental question, what matters to you? And what I've seen many times over, Bernie, is that it comes down to a fundamentally just one word, choice. We all have choice to do better marketing, better sales, and you do ABM or not. ABM, I think it's an efficient way to grow business, a better way to grow business. But you as an individual, as a leader in your organization have to decide, does this matter to you? And if it does, if that experience that matters to you, then I think you would do some interesting things like the stories in the book. And I hope that question you wrestle with a little bit more than just the podcast.
Very inspirational, Sangram. Thank you so much for adding that. Of course, we want to let people know not only how they can connect with you on your social handles, but where they can get a copy of your book, ABM is B2B.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, as you know, Bernie. So you can just look for me, Sangram Vajre. And the book is on Amazon. It's interestingly right now is the bestseller in direct marketing. I don't know how Amazon figures that out. So as long as that's there, I'm just going to love that and take a screenshot.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. And I want to encourage my listener, if you're not already following Sangram on LinkedIn or Twitter, he is Sangram Vajre, Vajre, and we, of course, will link that up in our show notes page at vengreso.com. Well, Sangram, thank you so much for joining me here today. I've enjoyed this conversation. I wish we could go for another hour, but we've got to leave it here for now. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast.
Thank you, Bernie.
Hey, before you go, does it feel like everything is a priority and everyone's asking for your time and attention? Yeah. Well, here's a free video training that's going to help you manage your time, double your income, and skyrocket your team's success. It's called the Sales Management Matrix. You'll learn exactly how to spend your time for the highest revenue return possible. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, I'm a marketer, not a sales manager. It doesn't matter. Just go to gong.io/matrix and get the free 19-minute video training. You're going to love it. Again, it's gong.io/matrix.
This wraps up another inspiring episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. If you want to share this podcast with a friend, let them know that we're available on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Podcasts. And we love 5-star reviews. If you are not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. You can read the show notes for each episode at vengresso.com. While you're there, sign up to receive the show notes delivered to your inbox through our weekly alerts. And be sure to also check out our Selling with Social podcast hosted by Vengresso CEO Mario Martinez Jr. Again, you'll find our show notes at vengresso.com. And that's one S in Vengresso. Tune in again next week when Bernie Borges brings you another inspiring interview to help you thrive on your modern marketing journey.